नमस्कार, मैं हूं डॉक्टर अन्नपूर्णा से और आज मैं आपके लिए लेके आई हूं एक मॉक टेस्ट जो यूजीसी नेट के एग्जाम में क्वेश्चंस पहले पूछे जा चुके हैं। उनसे जुड़े क्वेश्चंस हैं, 20 क्वेश्चंस होंगे और अगर ये मॉक टेस्ट आप खुद सॉल्व करना चाहते हैं तो बस ऑडियो म्यूट कर दीजिए और खुद सॉल्व कीजिए। अदरवाइज आप ऑडियो ऑन रखिए और मैं आपके लिए ये मॉक टेस्ट सॉल्व करूंगी। मेरी आवाज में थोड़ी खराश है क्योंकि बहुत बीमार हूँ, बट स्टूडेंट्स को प्रॉमिस किया था कि मॉक टेस्ट जरूर करूंगी, इसलिए इस हफ्ते कर रही हूँ। So here's a new mock test for you. The questions which have already been asked in the UGC-NET exams are here on this mock test. There are going to be 20 questions. I apologize for my bad voice. I'm quite sick today, but it was important for me to get this mock test to you. And let's start. If you want to solve it yourself, just mute the audio. If not, go with me. Please arrange these books in the order in which they were published. So the first is Limits to Growth. Second option is Silent Spring. Third is Our Common Future. And the last is Resourceful Earth. So the book Limits to Growth was published on March 2, 1972. It was a report on exponential economic population growth with a limited supply of resources studied by computer simulation. Silent Spring, it was about the bad impacts, the ill impacts of DDT, and it was published in the year 1962 by Rachel Carson. Our Common Future, we all know it was a report published by the World Commission on Environment and Development in the year 1987. And Resourceful Earth was published in the year 1984. And it emphasized inventing substitutes to limited resources. So the choices are ACDB, BCAD, BADC, and ABCD. And so the book that was published first was Silent Spring, which is B. Then comes A, which is Limits to Growth. Then comes D, which is Resourceful Earth in 1984. And finally C, which is Our Common Future. So the correct answer is this one, BADC. Okay. Let's move on to the next slide. Which of these continents faces the greatest risk of desertification? So Africa is a continent which has two big deserts, the Sahara Desert and the Kalahari Desert. So since this continent already has two deserts and also quite a few nations of this continent like Haiti are doing tremendous deforestation. So this continent, Africa, is at the greatest risk of desertification compared to Asia, South America, or North America. Third, women are closer to nature than men. What kind of perspective is this? Is it a realist perspective? No. A realist believes in a chaotic or rebellious world order with power and war at its core. तो realist जो है वो युद्ध के बेसिस पे दुनिया जीतने की बात करता है, तो ये तो नहीं है. Essentialist proposes that certain groups are united by an underlying nature that determines their characteristics and behavior. तो ये एसेंशियलिस्ट हो सकता है. फेमिनिस्ट जो होता है वो नारी सशक्तिकरण की बात करता है, तो यहाँ पे नारी सशक्तिकरण की बात नहीं हो रही है. डीप इकोलॉजी जो है वो कहता है कि सारे जीव जंतुओं की जो वैल्यू है वो सेम ही है. तो क्लियरली ये डीप इकोलॉजी से भी स्टेटमेंट का कोई लेना देना नहीं है. ये एक एसेंशियलिस्ट व्यू है क्योंकि ये औरतों को एक ऐसे ग्रुप में बांट रहा है जो कि नेचर से ज्यादा क्लोज है. तो ये एक essentialist view है. So this is an essentialist view that women are closer to nature because essentialists group people in certain groups, and this statement is grouping women into a group that's closer to nature. Which of the following is not a matter of global importance when it comes to deforestation in the tropics? So first, the ability of tropical forest to absorb chemicals that deplete the ozone layer. This statement sounds iffy. ये थोड़ा doubtful statement है, इसलिए इस पर हम बाद में आएंगे. दूसरा, their importance in maintaining carbon-oxygen balance of our planet. So clearly, हर forest का ये importance होता है, tropical forest का तो बहुत ही ज़्यादा है. The ability of these forests to regulate surface air and air temperatures, moisture content, and reflectivity. ये point भी पूरा valid है. Their contribution to biodiversity. Clearly, tropical forests do contribute to biodiversity, तो ये भी important है. So B, C, or D, all these 3 points are important when it comes to deforestation in the tropic. But the point A, the ability of tropical forests to absorb chemicals that deplete the ozone layer, ये point iffy है, ये point global, ये point forest से directly related नहीं है, ये point proven भी नहीं है, तो इसलिए यही आंसर है. Which of the following is not a matter of global importance? This is the answer, A. 4. Which of the following is the broadest approach to address the problems of man-environment interactions? Broadest का मतलब होता है सबसे डिटेल. तो सबसे डिटेल अप्रोच कौन सा है? इंसानों के और उनके पर्यावरण के इंटरैक्शन को एड्रेस करने के लिए. तो पहला है नेचुरल रिसोर्स कंजर्वेशन अप्रोच. नेचुरल रिसोर्स कंजर्वेशन ये एक इंपॉर्टेंट अप्रोच है. अर्बन इंडस्ट्रियल ग्रोथ ओरिएंटेड अप्रोच, मतलब शहरीकरण और औद्योगिकरण का जो विस्तार है उसके ऊपर ध्यान देना. रूरल एग्रीकल्चरल ग्रोथ अप्रोच, गांव में जो खेती बाड़ी होती है उससे रिलेटेड. या वाटरशेड डेवलपमेंट अप्रोच. वाटरशेड डेवलपमेंट अप्रोच, आंसर डी. ये जो है डी, ये करेक्ट आंसर है. क्यों है? क्योंकि watershed is a big natural divide that divides two big areas. Like Himalayas are a watershed, and below the Himalaya there's a totally different ecosystem. North side of the Himalaya there's a totally different ecosystem, and Himalaya as a watershed protects us from the cold winds and other calamities from the north. So clearly watershed development is the broadest approach to address the problems of man-environment interaction. Because if we talk about rural agriculture, it will be like a few villages. If we talk about urban industrial growth, it will be one city which is industrialized. But when we talk about watershed development, it will be a whole host of cities and states that come under one big physical watershed. So it's the broadest approach to address the problems of man-environment interactions. Like Himalayas is a perfect example of a big watershed. So, what is the most common source of carbon monoxide in urban area? So answers are thermal power plants, transport sector, industrial sector, and domestic sector. Thermal power plants do emit carbon monoxide, but thermal power plants are not everywhere. Industries are also not everywhere. Domestic sector doesn't emit all that much carbon dioxide. But transport sector is everywhere, in cities, in villages, everywhere. Transportation contributes to 25%, at least 25% of all pollution. And transportation sector is everywhere. You see bikes, scooters, cars, buses, trucks, trains, and airplanes everywhere. So transportation sector, answer is B. Transportation sector is the most common source of carbon monoxide in urban areas. Electric vehicles run on fuel cells. The energy comes from, so fuel cells, right? So combustion of methane is one of the options. Clearly, if it's a fuel cell, there's no combustion. So this is not the option. Then answer is hydrogen. So hydrogen, there is no combustion. It is hydrogen is utilized for fuel cells in electric vehicles. Then LPG, that is liquefied petroleum gas, again combustion. So this is not the option. CNG, compressed natural gas, again combustion. This is not an option. So hydrogen is the answer. Answer is B. Hydrogen is used in the fuel cells of electric vehicles. And the end product is water, which is eco-friendly. That's why electric vehicles are eco-friendly. UNESCO, United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization. ये full form जरूर याद रखिएगा, पूछा जा सकता है. Has recognized which of the following bioreserves? Is it Manas? No. Is it Kanchenjunga? No. Is it Sheshachalam Hills? No. Is it Greater Nicobar? Yes. The answer is D. It's the Greater Nicobar. It's the southernmost island of the Nicobar Islands, and about 103,870 hectares of tropical evergreen forest ecosystem has been preserved by UNESCO, and it has been recognized as a bioreserve. So, ninth question. Which of the following activities causes maximum water pollution? Is it agriculture? Is it hydroelectric power plants? Is it industry? Or is it urbanization? So, कौन सी एक्टिविटी है जो सबसे ज्यादा वाटर पोल्यूशन करती है? क्या खेती बाड़ी से होता है, क्या हाइड्रोइलेक्ट्रिक पावर प्लांट से होता है, क्या इंडस्ट्री से, या अर्बनाइजेशन से? तो खेती बाड़ी से जो वाटर पोल्यूशन है वो कम होता है। हाइड्रोइलेक्ट्रिक पावर प्लांट्स हर जगह नहीं है और उनसे भी वाटर पोल्यूशन लिमिटेड होता है। इंडस्ट्री से वाटर पोल्यूशन बहुत ज्यादा होता है, पर इंडस्ट्री भी हर जगह नहीं है। अर्बनाइजेशन मतलब शहरीकरण। So cities have been growing by leaps and bounds, and they are everywhere all around water bodies. Ever since the ancient civilizations, cities have always settled around water bodies. शहर हमेशा पानी के किनारे होते हैं, बढ़ते ही जा रहे हैं और उनका कोई माप तौल भी नहीं रहा है क्योंकि बेहिसाब बढ़ रहे हैं और वो हर जगह है नदी के किनारे। तो अर्बनाइजेशन जो है, और अर्बनाइजेशन में इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन भी आ जाता है, उसमें हाइड्रो इलेक्ट्रिक पावर प्लांट भी आ जाता है। तो अर्बनाइजेशन जो है वो सबसे ज्यादा वाटर पोल्यूशन कॉज करता है। सो अर्बनाइजेशन इज द आंसर, डी। मैच द फॉलोइंग बायोस्फीयर रिजर्व विद देयर लोकेशंस। सो फर्स्ट बायोरिजर्व is Nilgiri. Nilgiri is located in the Deccan Peninsula. Manas is in Chhattisgarh now. Simlipal is in Eastern Himalayas. And Achanakmar Amarkantak is on Western Ghats. So ये automatically matched है। Nilgiri Deccan Plateau से match, Deccan Peninsula से match होगा। Manas छत्तीसगढ़, Simlipal Eastern Himalaya और Achanakmar Amarkantak Western Ghats. These bioreserves. 11. Which of the following nations is not a part of G5? So we all know that Mexico, Brazil, and China are part of G5. So Korea is the only option. Korea is not part of G5. G5 क्या होते हैं? ये important है. Please do research and know more about G5 because this could be another question which could be asked of you. The maximum per capita emission of carbon dioxide comes from, answers are China, Japan. Options are China, Japan, USA, and India. And the answer will be USA because we all know that most developed nations have people living a rich life and their carbon footprints are way higher than the developing nations, and USA being the most developed nations, the carbon footprint of every resident, every citizen of USA is way more than people living in China, Japan, and India. And that's why the per capita emission of carbon dioxide is maximum from USA. I'm sorry about my poor voice quality because of sickness. The world population growth rate was 3.5% at a certain reference year. Assuming exponential growth, after how many years population of the world would have increased by 16 times? तो वर्ल्ड का पॉपुलेशन 3.5% है अगर, तो 16 गुना बढ़ जाएगा। वो कितने सालों में होगा? तो आंसर है ए, 80 सालों में। इसको मैथमेटिकल कैलकुलेशंस होगा जो मैं आपको अभी नहीं बता पाऊंगी, मैं आपको बाद में बताऊंगी कैसे हुआ। बट तब तक आप भी सोचिए, आप मैथमेटिकली कैलकुलेट कीजिए कि कैसे हुआ। The phrase tragedy of commons is in the context of, options are tragic events due to release of poisonous gases, tragic conditions of poor people, degradation of renewable resources, climate change. तो ये जो phrase है tragedy of commons, ये environmental economics से जुड़ा हुआ है और इसका मतलब है कि लोग उस कॉमन रिसोर्स को बहुत बुरी तरह से एक्सप्लॉइट करते हैं जो फ्रीली अवेलेबल है और जिसपे किसी का कंट्रोल नहीं है। और ये वो है जो डिग्रेडेशन ऑफ रिन्यूएबल रिसोर्सेज के बारे में। रिन्यूएबल रिसोर्सेज वो हैं जो आसानी से अवेलेबल है, बार बार रिन्यू हो सकते हैं, और उनका डिग्रेडेशन होता है क्योंकि लोग उसको बुरी तरह एक्सप्लॉइट करते हैं। तो आंसर होगा सी। 15. Kyoto Protocol is related to A. Ozone depletion, B. Hazardous waste, C. Climate change, या D. Nuclear energy. Clearly, Kyoto was a place in Japan, and और ये क्योटो कॉन्फ्रेंस जो है वर्ल्ड समिट हुआ था 1992 में, और वो क्लाइमेट चेंज के ऊपर था। सो द आंसर विल बी सी, क्लाइमेट चेंज। क्योटो प्रोटोकॉल is related to climate change. Kyoto World Earth Summit was held in the year 1992 in Japan. Answer is C, climate change. Which of the following sources of emissions leads to ozone formation in the lower troposphere? So one option is transport sector, another refrigeration and air conditioning, C, wetlands, and D, fertilizers. Answer is A, ट्रांसपोर्ट सेक्टर, क्योंकि ट्रांसपोर्ट सेक्टर से नाइट्रोजनस कंपाउंड्स और अनबर्न्ड हाइड्रोकार्बन्स निकलते हैं, और उससे फोटोकेमिकल स्मॉग बनता है, और ओजोन फोटोकेमिकल स्मॉग का एक हिस्सा है। तो जो ट्रोपोस्फेयर में ओजोन फॉर्मेशन होता है वो ट्रांसपोर्ट सेक्टर की वजह से ही होता है। तो स्मॉग इन इंडियन सिटीज मेनली कंसिस्ट ऑफ, जैसे कि मैंने अभी कहा, ए ऑक्साइड्स ऑफ नाइट्रोजन एंड अनबर्न्ड हाइड्रोकार्बन्स। आंसर इज बी। तो क्वेश्चन 17 का आंसर है बी, और क्वेश्चन 16 का आंसर है ए, ट्रांसपोर्ट सेक्टर। आंसर इसका है ए, और इसका है बी, ऑक्साइड्स ऑफ नाइट्रोजन एंड अनबर्न्ड हाइड्रोकार्बन्स। 18. Which of the following is most hazardous? Earthquakes, forest fires, volcanic eruptions, droughts and floods. Clearly, it looks like earthquakes, forest fires, and volcanic eruptions are most disastrous, but believe me, they're not. Droughts and floods together lead to more death tolls than any of these options. So the answer is D, droughts and floods. Answer is D. It kills more people than earthquakes, forest fire, or volcanic eruption. D is the answer. What is the share of renewable energy in the total energy produced in India? Is it 2 to 3%? Is it 22 to 25%? Is it 10 to 12%? Or is it 35 to 40%? The answer is D, because 38% of India's energy comes from renewable sources, and it is 136 gigawatt energy produced out of renewable sources. And India is the third largest producer of renewable energy in the world. So the answer is D, 35 to 40%. Currently, it's at 38%. Montreal Protocol is associated with ozone depletion, climate change, wetland conservation, or marine pollution. Clearly, Montreal Protocol is associated with ozone depletion. So the answer is A. In the year 1987, the Montreal Protocol was concluded, and it came into force on 1st of January 1989, because the nations of the world were advised to check their chlorofluorocarbon emissions so that the ozone hole could be healed. So Montreal Protocol is associated with ozone depletion. Montreal is a city in Canada, and the Earth Summit was held in Montreal, Canada, to discuss how to solve ozone depletion, the ozone crisis. At that time, the ozone crisis seemed to be the biggest crisis, but now the ozone hole is healing itself because we have phased out the use of chlorofluorocarbons, and now climate change is the biggest problem of the world. With this, my mock test comes to an end. Thank you. I hope this was useful. I apologize again for my terrible voice because of my sickness. Thank you. Jai Hind. Jai Bharat. Please do let me know in the comments below if it was okay doing this mock test this way, or if you want it to be done any other way. किसी और तरीके से मैं mock test solve करूँ, अगर आपको वो चाहिए, comments में मुझे जरूर बताएं. Thank you. Jai Hind.